ॐ शुक्लांबरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करभावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। अगजानन पद्मार्कं गजाननमहर्निशम् अनेकदन्तं भक्तानामेकदन्तमुपास्महे। श्रीमहागणपतये नमः। गुरवे सर्वलोकानां विषजे भवरोगिणां निधये सर्वविद्यानां श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां श्रीहयग्रीवमुपास्महे। श्रीहयग्रीवमूर्तये नमः। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणि विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। श्रीमहासरस्वत्यै नमः। उमा कोमलहस्ताब्ज सम्भावितललाटकं हिरण्यकुण्डलं वन्दे कुमारं पुष्करस्रजं। வெற்றிவேல் முருகனுக்கு ஹரஹரோஹரா. லோகவீரியம் மகாபூஜ்யம் சர்வரக்ஷாகரம் விபும் பார்வதி ஹிருதயானந்தம் சாஸ்தாரம் பிரணமாம்யகம். சுவாமியே சரணமையப்பா. வாகர்த்தாவிவ சம்பிருக்தௌ வாகர்த்த பிரதிபத்தயே जगदः पितरौ वन्दे पार्वती परमेश्वरौ। श्री पार्वती परमेश्वराभ्यां नमः। कोमलं कूजयन् वेणुं श्यामलोऽयं कुमारकः वेदवेद्यं परब्रह्म तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। अस्मद्गुरुचरणारविन्दाभ्यां नमः। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। श्रीकृष्ण गोविन्द हरे मुरारे श्रीनाथ नारायण वासुदेव। पीताम्बरं करविराजितचक्रशङ्ख कौमोदकी सरसिजं करुणासमुद्रं राधासहायम् अतिसुन्दरमन्दहासं वातालयेशम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। कृष्णो रक्षतु मां चराचरगुरुः कृष्णं नमस्ये सदा। कृष्णेनैव सुरक्षितोऽहमसकृत् कृष्णाय दत्तं मनः। कृष्णादेव समुद्भवो मम विभो कृष्णस्य दासोऽस्म्यहं। कृष्णे भक्तिरचञ्चलास्तु भगवन् हे कृष्ण तुभ्यं नमः। श्री गुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं। नम्राणां सन्निधत्ते सततमपि पुरस्तैरणभ्यर्थितानपि अर्थान् कामानजस्रं वितरति परमानन्दसान्द्रां गतिं च। इत्थं निःशेषलभ्यो निरवधिकफलः पारिजातो हरे त्वं क्षुद्रं तं शक्रवाटी ध्रुममभिलषति व्यर्थमर्त्यव्रजोऽयं। श्री गुरुवायूरप्पा शरणं। श्रीः भट्टपादम् अनिशं हृदि भावयामि। वंशी विभूषितकरात् नवनीरदाबात् पीताम्बरात् अरुणबिम्बफलाधरोष्टात् पूर्णेन्दुसुन्दरमुखात् अरविन्दनेत्रात् कृष्णात् परं किमपि तत्त्वमहं न जाने। കൈരണ്ടും കൂപ്പി ഞാൻ വീണ്ടുമീറക്കുന്നു നീരജലോചന നിന്നോടായി. ഏതീനു മന്യനെ കുംഭീരേന്ദാത്തോരു രീതിയിൽ നീ എന്നെ പാലിക്കന്നായി. കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ ജയ കൃഷ്ണ ഹരേ. Good morning, everyone. So we'll do a review of 46 and 47 till we stop. Vasu, can you do 46?
Sure.
And Revati, can you do 47 till where we stopped?
Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. Ayi Deva Pura Kilatvahi Swayamuttanashaye Stanandhaye Parijrumbanato Vyapavrite Vadane Vishwamachastavallavi Punarapyata Bhalakai Samham Tvayi Leela Nirate Jagatpate Palasanchya Manchana Kridha Tava Mridbhojanamuchurarbakaha Ayite Pralayabhadhau Vibho Shitito Yadi Samasta Bakshinaha Prudupashanato Rujha Bhavet Iti Bhita Janani Chukopasa Ayi Dhurvinayatmakatvaya Kimumritsa Bhatavak Vatsa Bakshita iti matrigiram chiram vibho vitatam tvam prati jagnishe hasan ayite sakalair vinishchite vimatishte vadanam vidharyatam iti matrivi vatsito mukham vikasat padmanibham vyadharayah Api mrillava darshanotsukham jananim tam bahutat tarpayan nibha prithivim nikilam nav kevalam bhuvanan yakilan yadhidrishaha kuhachit vanamambudi kvachit Kvachidabhram kuhachidrasatalam manudadanuja kvachitsuraha dadrishe kimnat sorry.
No, go ahead.
Dadrishe kimnatadhatvadhanane.
The first line or second line, however you have it, and the kvachi dabram, not, I think you said dabram, kvachi dabram kuhachidrasatalam.
Kvachidabhram kuhachidrasadhalam manudadanuja kvachitsuraha dadrishe kimnatadhatvadhanane. Kalashambudishayinam punaha paravaikunta padhadivasinam swapurascha nijarbhakatmakam katidha tvam nadadarshya samuke.
So, chinna correction. First word, kalashambudi. This there. Kalashambudi. Okay.
Sham abhudiya.
It's a kalasha ambudi. So, but when you're saying it, it's kalashambudi. I think you said kalashambudi. You said it's kalashambudi. Okay. Keep.
Vikasad bhuvani mukhodhare nanubhuyo pitadha vidhananaha anayasputa mikshito bhavan anavastam jagatam patatanot dhritattvadiyam tadakshanam jananim tam pranayena mohayan Sanamambaditeshu pasajan Bhagavan Nadbhuta Bhala Pahimam. Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha.
Revati, whenever you're ready.
Dasakam 47, Ulu Khala Bandhanam, Egata Tati Vimata Mataram Samupaseti Van Bhavan Tanyalolupataya Nivarayan Angametyapavivat Payotarao Artapita Kusakutmale Tvayi Sniktaha Samadurana Nambuje Duktami Sadahane Parishrutam Dartuma Sujanani Jagamate.
No correction. And the first line, right? And then because I think when you're singing it in the tune, you should be careful. The very end, sometimes not to stretch. For example, the first line is Kucha Kudmale Twayi. It's a short E, right? So on the you should be careful not to say Twayi, then it becomes a long E. So some places like that, just be careful. Okay, that's it.
Okay. Sami Pitarasa Banga Sangada Krodha Parya Pariputa Setasa Manda Danda Muba Prihya Paditam Hinda Deva Tadipajanam Tvaya
Hanta Deva, last line. Hanta Deva.
Hanta Deva Tadipajanam Tvaya Uchalattavanida Mucha Kaistadha Sannisamya Janani Samakruda Tvatyasho Visaravattadashasa Satya Eva Tati Vistrutam Shitau
Small correction. In the first line, second line, Sanni Shamya, not
Shamya.
Yeah, that's all.
Sanni Shamya Janani Samadhrita Tvatyaso Visaravattadashasa Satya Eva Tati Vistrutam Shitau Vedamarga Parimarkidam Rusha Tvamavishya Parimarga Vayantyasau Sandadarsha Sukriti Lukale Dikiyamana Navanita Motave Tvam Prakrihya Padapiti Pavana Basuranana Saroja Masusa Rosa Rushita Muhi Saki Puro Bantanaya Rashana Mupatate.
We stopped there. So in the first line, there's a plus, okay? Biti Bhavana Basuranana.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think maybe breath, that's okay. But anga plus potungo illenaka. And then Sarojam Ashu again. And there's a Sha varadu. Very end of that line. Sarojam Ashu Sa. Okay.
Sa.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll continue now. So Niki, I think Swami, you're on. Yeah. Lakshmi Garu. Okay, so Swami and Lakshmi Garu,
Yes,
can be for the first group, and then Jayashree and Sridevi Garu, we can be for the second half. Okay. Answer 7. Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamai bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvyangulo namakhilam kilaikshata. So we saw in the last class, right, where Yashoda was trying to, because all the Gopikas were laughing, ridiculing her. So she was trying to tie Krishna with a rope. That's where we kind of left it last time. So here, what Bhattaripad is telling is how the word Pasham, the word Pasham, right, which is, Bandhum. The Bandhum has two meanings. One is Bandhum, Bandham is like a friend or a relative. That's one Bandham. The other word of Bandhum is to bind somebody into something, right? So here he's using the same word Bandhum, but in two contexts. One is saying, just like how Sajjana, good people, just like how the good people want to friend you or want to like you or want to be part of you in that Bandhum, to that you, Yashoda is trying to bandhum with a rope. She's trying to tie you with a rope. But Bhattaripad is just playing with words. So he's saying to that you, she's trying to tie you with ropes. So what happens is, here first she ties with one rope and she finds that dvi anguli, so 2 fingers. She's short by 2 fingers when she's trying to tie him. So then she picks up a bigger rope, tries to tie again dvanguli. So again she's falling short by 2 fingers. Then she ties all these ropes together. Again, she tries to tie. Again, she's falling short by 2 fingers. So Andamari, she just keeps on trying. And no matter how many ropes she ties with, she's always falling short by the 2 finger length that she's not able to ultimately tie him. So this is because he says you cannot be tied, and that comes in the next answer. So we'll cover it then. So anyway, she's trying hard, but she's not able to overcome that the shortness of 2 finger lengths there. So bandhum Ichhati. Yeah, so first Ichhati is a short E there. Ichhati Yameva Sajjanas, and then put a plus. Tam Bhavantam Ai Bandhum Ichhati. So second time that Ichhati is becoming a long E. Ichhati. Sa Niyujya Rashana Gunan Bahun, comma Dvyangulonam. So that word you have to say together. So remember, the best word to remember it is dvya, means dvi, two, anguli, fingers. So dvengulonam akhilam kilaikshata. Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamai bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvengulonam akhilam kilaikshata.
Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamai bandhu. Sorry, I lost. Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamai bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvyangulo makhilam kilaikshata.
And that place, you better to break it at that ma. Dvengulonam akhilam. Dvengulonam akhilam. That's the best way if you want to break it there. Okay.
Dvyangulo makhilam kilaikshata. Is that right?
Yeah,
okay.
correct.
Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamayi bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvyangulonam akhilam kilaikshata.
Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamayi bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvyangulonam akhilam kilaikshata. Bandhumichhati yameva sajjanastam bhavantamayi bandhumichhati saniyujya rashana gunan bahun dvyangulonam akhilam kilaikshata.
Stanza 8. Vismitotsmita sakhi janekshitam swinna sanna vapusham nirikshyatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyatha. So the person she's trying to tie, if you remember, even in the Sandrananda, the first stanza itself, we said Nitya Muktam, right? She's always free. He's not bound by anything. He's always mukti. He's always free from everything. So that's what here is also saying, Nitya Mukta. So he says, you who is forever free. So when she tries to bind you, what's happening is she's not able to, and she's sweating, and she's so Swinna Sanna Vapashama, her whole body is exhausted. She's tired because she keeps on trying. And when she keeps on trying, all the gopis there are all sitting and laughing. They're sitting and again laughing, saying, you know what, you can't like tie your son. You know, he's such a small boy and you're struggling to tie him. So they're all sitting there, but they're also at the same time wonderstruck how every time she's trying it, she's falling by 2 fingers short. So the thing, like we said, is like previously, the Lord, you cannot tie him. There are only 2 instances, right, where you can actually, or who can tie or bind the Lord. So one, if you remember in the 33rd chapter, right, when we saw where Ambarisha Pakyanatla, where when Ambarisha finally goes to Vishnu, because the Sudarshana Chakram keeps chasing him against the Dhruvasa goes to Krishna, Vishnu. So he says, I am always bound. I am a Mama Bhakta Dasaha. I'm always a slave to my devotees, right? So only the devotees can bind. So that is another point here. And the second is, in Yashoda was trying all these times, nothing happened. But only when Krishna saw that she had completely given up, right? And there was no other way. She tried everything she can. She finally gave up and said that, please help. When she got to that point, then the Lord decided, okay, I don't want you to struggle anymore. I am surrendering to you. Only at that point, he gave up, right? And when he gave up, then she was finally able to tie him. So I think you have to get to the point. So the message here really is, just trying is one thing, but you have to reach a point where you have to feel that I have no other choice, right? When we always go and ask, so Lord, please give me something, we are asking it as an option because we may have other alternatives. So you have to reach a point where there is no other alternative. This is the final alternative. Without this, I have no choice. So when she reached that point, then the Lord himself obliged, and then she was able to tie him there. So Vismitot Smita. So that word has to come together. Vismitot Smita Sakhi Janekshitam, comma, Swinna Sanna Vapusham Nirikshya Tam Nitya Mukta Vapurapyaho Hare, comma, Bandhameva kripayanva manyataha. So try to, you can say that together. Kripayanva manyataha. Bismito smita sakhi janekshitam swinna sanna vapusham nirikshyatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyataha.
Vismitosmita sakhi janekshitam svinna sanna vapusham nirikshyatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyataha. Vismitosmita sakhi janekshitam svinna sanna vapusham nirikshyatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyataha.
Vishmitotsmita sakhi janekshitam svinna sanna vapusham nirikshatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyataha. Vishmitotsmita sakhi janekshitam svinna sanna vapusham nirikshatam nityamukta vapurapyaho hare bandhameva kripayanva manyataha.
9. Stiyatam chiramulu khale khale tyagata bhavanameva sayada pragulu kalabhilantare tadha sarpirarpidamadanna vasnitaha. So he then says, oh naughty boy, right? Because she's been giving trouble. Says, you know what, finally I'm been able to tie you. So I want you to remain here, because remember that she was actually working. She was churning the butter and then she had to go to the kitchen and all those things, right? So she leaves him there and says, you stay here till I come. And then she leaves him, and then Yashoda then goes in to work. So at that time, remember that previously we were talking about how in that mortar, Krishna had stored some butter and kept when he first ran in. So although he was tied, he then had some butter in his hand, and somehow he was beginning to eat that butter, although his hands were tied. So he remains there, waiting for his mother to go, because the next chapter is what's going to happen next, right? So everybody's looking, and then he's continuing to eat his butter and remain there. Stiyatam chiram ulukhale. So next one, you put a plus. Khale tyagata. So put a plus there. Khale tyagata bhavanameva sa yada. So that whole line we'll say it together. Pragulukhala bilantare tada, comma, sarpirarpitam. So that word is together. Sarpirarpitam. Then you can break at that ma if you want. Adhanna vastitaha. Sarpirarpitam adanna vastitaha. Stiyatam chiramulu khale khale tyagata bhavanameva sayada pragulu khalabilantare tadha sarpirarpidamadanna vastitaha.
ராஜேஷ் சாரி, ஒரு என்னோட புக்ல வந்து ஸ்ரீயதாம் சிரமுலோகே லோ லு
Chiramulu kaleti agata அப்படி போட்டிருக்கா?
ஆமா.
Okay, so I think they have just broken that word. Okay, so kaleti plus agata, right? So ti plus a is tya. So that's what. So because we're saying it together, you make it kaletyagata. Okay. So the ti and a that you have, make it tya, tya.
Stiyatam chiramulu khale khale tyagata bhavanameva sayada pragulu khalabilantare tada sarpirarpitamadanna vastitaha.
Lakshmi Garu, the second line after tada there is a pause, okay, in the second line.
After tada I forgot. Stiyatam chiramulu khale khale tyagata bhavanameva sayada pragulu khalabilantare tada sarpirarpitamadanna vastitaha.
स्थीयतां चिरमुलूकले कले त्यागता भवनमेव सा यदा प्रागुलूकलबिलान्तरे तदा सर्पिरर्पितमदन्नवास्थिताः स्थीयतां चिरमुलूकले कले त्यागता भवनमेव सा यदा प्रागुलूकलबिलान्तरे तदा सर्पिरर्पितमदन्नवास्थिताः
Stanza 10. यद्यपाशसुगमो विभो भवान् संयतः किमु सपाशयानया एवमादिदिविजैरभिष्टुतो वातनाथ परिपाहि मां गधात्. So then when Krishna was finally bound, so everybody, the gods and everybody, devas are all coming and saying, you, again, Bhattacharya is playing with the word pasha. Pasha has two meanings. Pasham means desire. The other pasha also means rope. So he's saying that you are always only attainable to people who are apasham, people who are no desires, right? Because that's what we've been saying from the beginning. If you keep wanting something, then material things, then you will never reach the Lord. So you are only attainable to people who are apasham, who are desireless. However, you were then tied by Yashoda, who had a pasham, who had a rope. You somehow surrendered to her, who had a desire to tie you, right? So it is really amazing that you were actually taking the form of a child and doing all this. All the gods are praising. So that Vatanatha, that Lord of Guruvayu, please protect me. But everybody ends this chapter. So Yadya Pasha Sugamo Vibho Bhavan, comma Samyataha, is there put a ich sound, Samyatah Kimu Sapashayanaya, that's what word comes together. Sapashayanaya Evamadi Divijair. If you want to break it, you can break it at the Ra. Divijair Abishtuto, or say it together. Divijair Abishtuto, comma Vathanatha Paripahi Mam Gadat. Yadyapasha Sugamo Vibho Bhavan Samyatah Kimu Sapashayanaya Evamadi Divijaira Bhishtuto Vatanatha Paripahi Mam Gadat.
Yadyapasha sugamo vibho bhavan samyatah kimu sapashayanaya evamaditi vijaira bhishtuto vatanatha paripahi mangadat. Yadyapasha sugamo vibho bhavan samyatah kimu sapashayanaya Samyatah kimu sapashayanaya evamaditi vijaira bhishtuto vatanatha paripahi mam gadat.
Yadyapasha sugamo vibho bhavan samyatah kimu sapashayanaya evamaditi vijaira bhishtuto Vatanatha paripahi mam gadat. Yadyapasha sugamo vibho bhavan samyatah kimu sapashayanaya evamaditi vijaira bhishtuto Vatanatha paripahi mam gadat.
Shri Krishnaya Parabrahmane Namaha. Okay, that completes 47. So we'll go to 48, which is really a continuation of this. So Yamalarjuna Bhanjana Varnanam. So stanza 1. Muda Suraugais Twamudara Sammadaihi Udir Yadamodara Yitya Bhishtutaha Mridudara Swaira Mulukhalela Ganne Adurato Dvauka Kubhavu Daikshataha. So it continues, right? So Yashoda's now bound Krishna. So all the sages, everybody is like we said earlier, they're all also a little bit happy because it's a good way for them to see how the Lord who is unattainable, they're able to see him in the child form, tied, right? So here Bhattacharya starts with Damodara, right? So that is one of the names. So the meaning here is Dama means rope, Udara means stomach. So Damodara means one who has whose stomach is tied with a rope. So that's the meaning of the word Damodara, right? So that Damodara, he starts with saying, because you're tied with a rope. So Krishna is there and Yashoda was inside. So at that time, so on the Yashoda and Nandagopa's house, there were two big trees. So like, we always have identification, right? That this place has, you go to the tank and you turn right up in, and the Mari, there's two big trees. And these trees, nobody knows how long they have been. They have been there for thousands of years, these two trees. And so that's the indication for Yashoda and Nandagopa's house, is their house is right out, opposite the two trees, right? So those two trees were there. So Krishna, who was then attached to the mortar, then when he was waiting, he then sees these two Kakubau, it's called Yamalarjuna. Arjuna means big and bold. So Yamalarjuna means two big trees. That's what. So he sees those two trees there when he's waiting. So Mudha Suraugais Twam Udara, if you want to break it, Twamudara Sammadaihi. So put a visarga at the end there and comma, Sammadaihi. Next line, Rudirya that you have, make it Udirya, remove the Ra. So Udirya Damodara Ityabhishtutaha. Mridu Daraha is that, put a is to join, Mridu Daras Swairam Ulukhale. You can break there, Swairam Ulukhale Lagan. Put a in and then a comma, Lagan, comma. Next line, that in and a na, if you have Sanskrit, you can remove it and put a a. Adurato Dwau Kakubhavu Daikshataha. Muda Suraugais Twamudara Sammadaihi Udiryadamodarayitya Mrududara Swairamulukhale Laganne Adurato Dvau Kakubhavu Daikshataha.
Muda Suraighaistva Mudara Sammadaihi Udirya Damodara Ityabhishtutaha Mrududara Swairamulukhale Lagan Adurato Dvau Kakubhavu Daikshataha.
Lakshmi Garu, the first word, Suraugais.
Suraughais.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, you got. I think you said Surai. It was Surau. That's all.
Thank you. Muda Suraughaistva Mudara Sammadaihi Udirya Damodara Ityabhishtutaha Mrududara Swairamulukhale Lagan Adurato Dvau Kakubhavu Daikshataha. I have a question.
Yep.
Is it supposed Lagan no, like yanna and
No, I think that is only based on the way you are saying it, right? So you can say Mridudara Swairamulukhale Lagan. That's also good. Or Swairamulukhale Lagan. That's also fine. It's just how the tune that you are taking, right? It's okay.
Either way is okay.
Either way is okay. It's only in at the end of the day. So
Muda Suraugais Twamudara Sammadaihi Udirya Damodara Ityabhishtutaha Mridudara Swairamulukhale Laganne Adurato Dvau Kakubhavu Daikshataha. Muda Suraugais Twamudara Sammadaihi Udirya Damodara Ityabhishtutaha Mridudara Swairamulukhale Laganne Adurato Dvau Kakubhavu Daikshataha.
Stanza 2. Kubera Sunur Nalakubarabhidaha Paro Manigriva iti Pratam Gataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madhau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukha Vakhelatam. So now this is taking a little bit of a rewind, right? So backstory here. So Kubera had two sons. One was Nala Kubara, other was Manigriva. So this is dating back several thousands of years. So on the Samhita, they were not in Earth. They were in a completely different planetary system and everything. So they had worshipped Shiva and they had gotten a lot of boon and blessings and everything. And of course, they were sons of Kubera. So they also had a lot of wealth. So with that, what happened is although they were originally very religious and devoted to Shiva and everything, later on when they got a lot of wealth, they then started going into wrong ways, right? They became more proud of the wealth, and they didn't care about anybody else. So they had become complete, and they had started going in wrong ways and wayward, and they were starting to do all these unpleasant things. So more will come later, but that's kind of setting the stage that there were two sons of Kubera, and they were originally good, but then they started going into wrong ways. So Kubera Sunur Nala Kubara Bhidaha, comma, Paro Manigriva iti Pratam Gataha. So those are the two sense, Nala Kubara and Manigriva. Mahesha Sevadi Gata Shriyon Madau, comma, Chiram Kila Tvad Vimukhava Khelatam. So that word comes together, Vimukhava Khelatam. Kubera Sunur Nalakubara Bhidaha Paro Manigriva ite Pratam Gataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukhava Khelatam.
Kubera Sunur Nalakubara Paro Manigriva iti Prathangataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukhava Khelatam. Kubera Sunur Nalakubara Bhidaha Paro Manigriva iti Prathangataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukha. How do I break it? Chiram Kilatva Vimukha.
Yeah, I think that Tvad, Chiram Kila Tvad is up to that. Then Vimukhava Khelatam, you can't break it. So you kind of have to say that together.
Chiram Kilatvad Vimukhava Khelatam.
Exactly, that's correct.
Kubera Sunur
Kuba Nalakubara Bhidaha.
Nalakubara Bhidaha. Kubera Sunur Nalakubara Bhidaha Paro Manigriva iti Pratam Gataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukha Vakelatam. Kubera Sunur Nalakubara Bhidaha Paro Manigriva iti Pratam Gataha Mahesha Sevadhigata Shriyon Madau Chiram Kilatvad Vimukha Vakelatam.
Stanza 3. Surapagayam kilatau madotkatau Surapagayat bahuyavatabrtau Vivasa saukeli parau sanarado Bhavat padaika pravano nirakshata. So like we said, they were, because of the pride and the haughtiness, they were just, doing unpleasant things. So one day, what happened is, and like I said, they are not in Earth, but they are in some other land. So they had gone to visit Shiva. And after that, after doing all that, the Manigriva and Nalakubara, they were then in a river, right, with some other women, and they were all completely naked. So you should never take bath in a river without any clothes on. It's like a disrespect to the river itself. But here, they were in some other river. Now, some say it's Ganges, some say it's something else, but later on it says they are sent down to earth. So they are not in earth at this point. So in some other river somewhere, right, they are with some other women, and they were all enjoying, and they were all completely intoxicated. They had liquor, and they were all enjoying in the river. So when they were doing that, coincidentally, Narada, who is Bhavat Padayeka, one who is only devoted to your feet, that sage Narada happened to come there. And Narada comes there, and he sees that they were all completely drunk. He could see from the way they were behaving and from their eyes and everything that they're completely drunk. So that's what is happening in this stanza. So Surapa Gayam Kila Tau Madot Katau, comma, Surapa Gayad Bahu Yavvatavritau. That word is together. Yavvatavritau. Vivasasau Keli Parau Sa Narado. I think some books have Naradaha. If you have Naradaha, change it to Narado, comma. Bhavat Padaika Pravano Niraikshata. Surapagayam Kilatau Madotkatau Surapagayat Bahuyauvatavritau Vivasasau Keli Parau Sanarado Bhavat Padaika Pravano Niraikshata.
Surapagayam kilatau madotkatau Surapagayat bahuyau vatavritau Vivasasau keli parau sanarado Bhavat padaika pravano niraikshata. Surapagayam kilatau madotkatau Surapagayat bahuyau vatavritau Vivasasau keli parau sanarado Bhavat padaika pravano niraikshata. Can I ask you a question? I have the same question in Devi Mahatyam and in Trishati also.
Yeah.
Yavata vrutau. The way we are doing is it's VVA, but it's only VA. So why does that sound Yavata is coming? Because it comes everywhere like that for a V sound.
I didn't understand. Yavvatavritau.
Surapagayat bahu yavvata vrutta. When I'm saying, I feel I'm saying VVA, yavvata.
No, it's Yau Bata, Yauva, right? But Yau, how do you say Yau? Yau, Yau, right? Yeah, because that's because the Yau is ending in kind of like a U, okay, Yau, and then the next Vata is starting with a V as in Victor, right? So it is kind of like YAUV.
Okay. That
so Yau Vata Vrutau. So you are saying it correct only. But I think maybe the confusion you are having is when you're saying it, if you're thinking, am I saying YAVV? You're not saying YAVV, you're saying YAU, Yau Vata Vrutau, BA.
Okay,
but they're very close enough, right? So it might sound like that, but you're saying it correct.
Rajesh, last line எனக்கு நிரேக்ஷதஹன்னு வந்திருக்கு. அப்ப விசர்கா இல்லையா அதுல?
இல்லங்க விசர்கா இல்லங்க சோபா. Just hold out. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Surapagayam kilatau madotkatau Surapagayat bahuyauvatavritau Vivasasau keli parau sanarado Bhavat padaika pravano niraikshata. Surapagayam kilatau madotkatau Surapagayat bahuyauvatavritau Vivasasau keli paro sanarado Bhavat padaika pravano niraikshata.
Lakshmi Garu, that Yauvata means like a group of young women. Avrito means surrounded by. So I think the Yauvata Vrito means surrounded by a group of young women. So that maybe that's why you're seeing that thing come up in multiple places. But that's the meaning of it. Yeah. Stanza 4. Bhiya priya lokamupatavasasam puro nirikshyapi madandhachetasau imau bhavad bhaktyupashanti siddhaye munir jagau shanti mrite kutas sukham. So when Narada comes there, so all the women who first they ended up seeing him, and of course they became very ashamed, and they also know that Narada is a big saint who has come. So they were all very afraid of the implications of him seeing them like that. So they immediately took all their clothes and they all ran away from there. All the women ran away. However, this Manigriva and Nalakubara, because they were so intoxicated, and then they kept thinking that they were so high with pride. So they did not respect, they did not do anything. They continued to stay in the water and they continued to remain there without showing any respect. So because they were completely blinded with intoxication as well. So Varuni, they had liquor and they were intoxicated, plus because of the pride. So then Narada decides that, you all have to learn a lesson. And more comes in the next stanza. So the main idea being that for them to attain Bhavad Bhakti. So for them, how do they attain devotion to the Lord? And Shanti and calmness of mind, because they were high in pride, right? So the way to compensate for that is to lower their pride and then for them to get devotion. So for that, Narada then gives them advice, which comes in the next stanza. So he then advises them. And here Bhattaripat says that with Shanti, without calmness, you cannot have happiness. So he says it's very important to have a very calm mind. And then he just kind of rhetoric, he asks the question, Kuta Sukham, how can you have happiness without being calm? So you need to have that calmness, which these two were missing here. So Bhiya, Priya, Lokam, Upatha, double tha coming there, Upatha, Vasasam, comma, Puro, Nirikshapi, Madandha, Chetasau. So Andha, that's blindness. So Mada means liquor. So Madhandha means blinded with intoxication. So Madandha Chetasau. Imau Bhavat Bhaktyupa Shanti Siddhaye, comma, Munir Jagau Shanti Mrite. So try to say that together. Shanti Mrite Kutaha. Kuta is Kutas Sukham. Bhiya Priya Lokamupattavasasam Puro Nirikshapi Madandhachetasau Imau Bhavad Bhaktyupashanti Siddhaye Munir Jagau Shanti Mrite Kutas Sukham.
Bhiya priya lokamupattavasasam Puro nirikshapi madandha chetasau Imau bhavad bhaktyupashanti siddhaye Munirjagau shanti mrute kutas sukham. Bhiya priya lokamupattavasasam Puro nirikshapi madandha chetasau Imau bhavad bhaktyupashanti siddhaye Munirjagau shanti mrute kutas sukham.
Biya priya lokamupata vasasam puro nirikshapi madanda chetasau imau bhavad bhaktyupashanti siddhaye munirjagau shanti mrite kutas sukham. Biya priya lokamupata vasasam Puro nirikshapi madanda chetasau imau bhavat bhaktyupashanti siddhaye munirjagau shanti mrite kutas sukham.
Okay, we'll go to stanza 5. So we'll change. I think it said Jayashree and the Sri Devi Garu, right? Second half. Okay. So stanza 5. Yuva mavaptau kakubhatmatan chiram Harim nirikshyata padam swamapnutam iti ritau tau bhavadikshana spriham gatau vrachante kakubhau babhuvatuhu. So here Narada actually gives a very long lecture to them, right? Of course, Bhattaripat has not said everything, but what Narada tells them is there are people, when you're born with either when you have high amount of wealth, that's one thing. Second is when you are actually born with a very high amount of knowledge, or when you're extremely beautiful, right? So when you kind of have all these categories of persons, he says the one who's attracted to a lot of materialistic things, they are the ones who are their intelligence gets distorted because they are so attached to get a certain result, materialistic output, that they don't think about what they are doing and how they're behaving. So their intelligence gets completely clouded by people who want more materialist things. And these people, Nalakubara and Manigriva, who have got so much of wealth now and who become so famous and they become rich, they are so clouded that they do not have respect for anybody else. And he gives two examples. He says that a rich person cannot understand how a poor person is, what he's going through, until and unless that rich person actually becomes a poor person, and then he goes through the pains of a poor person. Only then he will understand what a poor person is going through. That's one example. The second example he gives is when somebody is telling you that I am getting pricked with pins and I'm in pain. you cannot relate to my pain unless you have been pricked with pins and you have gone through that pain. And then when I'm saying it is paining, then you can relate more, right? And the Mari Narada is giving certain examples. And the reason he's giving these examples are because he says all the things, the sense of realization you have to go through, right? So all the bad things that we all commit, whatever here in this case, right? So the only way to get out of it is you have to go to the other side and experience that other side. That is the punishment. That is the real punishment. You have to feel that, because unless you feel it, you cannot relate to it, right? So that is what Narada is driving the point. And he says that because you both have been so drunk and you have lost your control of it, and then you are naked, number one. So number one, you are naked, and then you are not in conscious of anything that is happening. The two things, the one other creation which embodies those two things are trees, he says, because trees are naked, right? They're just standing there naked and they don't have any consciousness, right? Animals at least have consciousness, but the trees have no consciousness. Adan Tamil they say maram mari nikran, no, like you're just standing there with absolutely no matter what happens, you're just standing there, right? You are not reacting to anything. So he says, because of that, he says, I'm cursing you so that you get closer to God. He says, I'm cursing you that for several hundred of the heavenly years, which means several thousands of human years, you are going to go down to earth and you're going to be two trees. You're going to be born in the land. But he says, because my goal is for you to get closer to God, you will remember the sins that you have committed. So you will still have the memory of those sins, and then you will have the benefit of seeing the Supreme Lord himself, and eventually one day he's going to come and liberate you. So he says that's your punishment, is you have to keep contemplating on all the sins you have done, and that's the punishment. Appadinu Narada gives them the curse. So those two now.
A question, sorry, it might be a stupid question, but Anna, you're cursing them to be as a tree where jadamari irkarthukku vandu, then how are they going to realize then?
Because he says that they cannot act on it, right? So they can still contemplate on what mistakes they have done. So what he's saying is, you will remember the sins that you have committed, right? So because if you give a example, if you're born as an animal, you have an opportunity to react. You have an opportunity to commit more sins or to commit more things, right? Similarly, you're born as a human, you end up reacting, but a tree cannot react, it's just standing. So there's still consciousness is there, a consciousness of all the mistakes they have done, and they have to repent and contemplate on it, but they can't do anything about it.
Or time out mari it's given.
Time out mari, and then you can't react, but you have to sit and contemplate for thousands of years. You can't do anything, right? So that is the punishment they get, right? And this in 26th, right? We also saw in the 26th chapter also we saw, right? All how the crocodile got pushed in because of the various or certain things happen for reasons as to what the contemplation needs to be. Dajendra Mokshatla. So anyway, so here they are standing there, right, for several hundreds or thousands of years, and then they are born in the outskirts of Gokul, right, as these two trees. That's why these trees were already there when Nanda Gopa and all came. These trees were already there for several long years. So that's what is happening here. So I don't know, I lost track in the stanza. Okay, fine, yeah. Yuvama vaptau kaku bhatmatam chiram, comma, harim nirikshyatha padam swamapnutam itiritau tau bhavadikshana spriham, comma, gatau brajante kakubhau babhuvatuhu. So that's a Braja Bhumi. That's called the Braja. Whole Gokulam Vrindavanam is called Braja Bhumi. But because, like I said, Hindi they mix V and Ba. A lot of them becomes Bridge Bhumi. That's what they call nowadays. But it's actually Braja Bhumi. Vra. Yuva mavaptau kakubhatmatam chiram harim nirikshyata padam swamapnutam itiritau tau bhavadikshana spriham gatau vrajante kakubhau babhuvatuhu.
युवा भवाप्तौ ककुभात्मतां चिरं हरिं निरीक्ष्याथ पदं स्वमाप्नुतम् इति ऋतौ तौ भवदीक्षणस्पृहां गतौ व्रजान्ते ककुभौ बभूवतुः युवामवाप्तौ ककुभात्मतां चिरं हरिं निरीक्ष्याथ पदं स्वमाप्नुतम् इति ऋतौ तौ भवदीक्षणस्पृहां गतौ व्रजान्ते ककुभौ बभूवतुः
युवामवाप्तौ ककुभात्मतां चिरं हरिं निरीक्ष्याथ पदं स्वमाप्नुतम् इति ऋतौ तौ भवदीक्षणस्पृहां गतौ व्रजान्ते ककुभौ बभूवतुः.
Sridevi Garu, second line, harim. It's a short read there, okay?
युवामवाप्तौ ककुभात्मतां चिरं हरिं निरीक्ष्याथ पदं स्वमाप्नुतम् इति ऋतौ तौ भवदीक्षणस्पृहां गतौ व्रजान्ते ककुभौ बभूवतुः.
Stanza 6. Atandramindradruyugam tatha vidham sameyushamantaragamina tvaya tirayuto lukhalarodhanirdhutau chiraya jirnau paripatitau taru. So now we are fast forwarding to the present state. So Krishna, when he's tied, he then looks at these two trees, right? And then he thinks, you know what? My devotee Narada has given a commitment that I am going to come and free these people. So he's committed to fixing them, because what's going to happen is the next chapter they're going to go away to Vrindavan. So he has to kind of finish it off right now. Otherwise, these people are going to be remained as trees here for a long time, right? So Krishna then, because he's also tied with that ulukala, with the mortar, he then starts going in a very slow pace. He starts going towards these trees, and then he tries to get in between these trees. And when he tries to get in between these trees, that ulukala, that mortar is turned. It turns out 90 degrees, right? So it's not stuck between the two trees. And then with his entire force, whatever he has, he then pushes through those trees. And when he pushes through those trees, both those trees essentially get uprooted and they completely fall essentially. So those complete trees, and they have become very decayed because they have been living there for thousands of years. So he then, when he goes through them, and then very easily he then breaks those two trees and the trees fall there. So Atandram Indra, if you want to break it, Atandram Indra Druyugam Tatha Vidam, comma, Sameyusha Mantara Gamina Tvaya Tirayutho Lukala. So say that together. Tirayutho Lukala Rodha Nirdhutau, comma, Chiraya Jirnau Paripatitau Taru.
Rajesh ji, what the Atandra means? What is Atandra means?
Atandram, the Atandram is like without stopping, so kind of continuously going. So he didn't stop. He just kept walking. That's what it means. Without stopping, moving continuously.
Thank you.
Okay. And the Indra Drayugam is like Indra is like we said, is like those are called two Arjuna trees. So that's what the Indra Drayugam, the two Arjuna trees. That's what that Indra Drayugam is. So without pausing, he's going towards those.
Thank you, Rajesh.
Atandramindra Druyugam tatha vidham sameyushamantaragaminha tvaya tirayuto lukhalarodhanirdhutau chiraya jirnau paripatitau taru.
अतन्द्रमिन्द्रद्रुयुगं तथा विधं समेयुषामन्थरगामिना त्वया तिरायितो लूखलरोधनिर्धुतौ चिराय जीर्णौ परिपातितौ तरु अतन्द्रमिन्द्रद्रुयुगं तथा विधं समेयुषामन्थरगामिना त्वया तिरायितो लूखलरोधनिर्धुतौ चिराय जीर्णौ परिपातितौ तरु
अतन्द्रमिन्द्रद्रुयुगं तथा विधं समेयुषा मन्थरगामिना त्वया तिरायुतो लूखलरोधनिर्धुतौ चिराय जीर्णौ परिपातितौ तरु अतन्द्रमिन्द्रद्रुयुगं तथा विधं समेयुषा मन्तरगामिना त्वया तिरायुतो लूखलरोधनिर्धुतौ चिराय जीर्णौ परिपातितौ तरु.
Rajesh, ஒரே ஒரு question. திராயுதோவா திராயிதோவா?
Tirayito. Stanza 7. Abhajishake dvitayam yada tvaya tadaiva tadgarbhatala nireyusha mahatpisha yaksha yugena tatkshanat abhaji govinda bhavana pistavaihi. So from tadgarbha, so when from the root, from the core, so when the two trees fell, then from those two trees emerged, from the core of those trees, two divine beings, or people who were, like fire personified. They were in a very shining form, and two of them emerged out of those trees, which are Nalakubara and Manigriva. And then when they came, and then they bowed in front of Krishna, and that's kind of what is happening here. So there is coming out of it. They came with great splendor, and there was light in all directions when they came, and they bowed in front of Krishna and started singing your praise. So what they are saying is going to come in the next one, but those two essentially are getting liberated right now. So abhaji shakhi dvitayam yada tvaya, comma, tadaiva tad garbha talan nireyusha. So double na there, talan nireyusha mahatvisha yaksha yugena takshanat. Put a it at the end of that line. Takshanat, comma. Next line, the da that you have becomes a. Abhaji govinda bhavanapi stavaihi. So they start worshipping you, O Govinda.
Is it Bhavanapi or Bhavanapi?
Bhavanapi.
Oh.
Bhavan. Bhavan means in Sanskrit is you, male you. Bhavati means female you. Bhavan is male you. So abhajishakit dvitayam yada tvaya tadaiva tad garbhatala nireyusha mahatmisha yaksha yugena takshanat abhaji govinda bhavana pistavaihi.
अभाजिषाचिद्वितयं यदा त्वया तदैव तद्गर्भतलान्निरेयुषा महात्विषा यक्षयुगेन तत्क्षणात् अभाजि गोविन्द भवानपि स्तवैः अभाजिषाचिद्वितयं यदा त्वया तदैव तद्गर्भतलान्निरेयुषा महात्विषा यक्षयुगेन तत्क्षणात् अभाजि गोविन्द भवानपि स्तवैः
अभाजिषाकिद्वितयं यदा त्वया तदैव तद्गर्भतलान्निरेयुषा महात्विषा यक्षयुगेन तत्क्षणात् अभाजि गोविन्द भवानपि स्तवैः अभाजिषाकिद्वितयं यदा त्वया तदैव तद्गर्भतलान्निरेयुषा महात्विषा यक्षयुगेन तत्क्षणात् अभाजि गोविन्द भवानपि स्तवैः.
Stanza 8. Ihanya bhaktopi sameshyate kramat bhavantametau khalu rudra sevakau muni prasadat bhavadangrimagatau gatau vrinanau khalu bhakti muttamam. So Nalakubra and Manigriva, so they say, you know what, we are definitely servants of your servants, O Lord. So we know, we realize now, right? Because they've been contemplating for thousands of years. So we realize the mistakes we have done, and only thanks to your disciple Narada that we were able to get this opportunity, right? To realize this mistake and also to be able to come and see you face to face. And the Lord also says that, yes, because of these things you have done, that's how you come down from Swargaloka to this Bhumi, right? To take birth as these trees. And since you are favored by Narada, you have now been released. So continue to be devoted to me. And they also say, yes, we are going to be committed, and then we are going to be devoted to you. With that, Manigriva and Nalakubra go away. And all Bhattaripat says here is, although they were devoted to other lords, they ended up going in wrong ways. And eventually, finally, they came back to you, right? Came back to you. And when they surrendered to you, that's how they got liberated again. And then they got Bhakti Muttamam. And then they got a highest form of devotion, because they got blessed by you and they continue to be committed to that. So, ihanya bhaktopi sameshyati kramat, comma, Bhavantam etau khalu Rudra Sevakau. So they started off by being devotees of Rudra. Muni Prasadat Bhavadangrim Agatau. You can break at that ma if you want. Bhavadangrim Agatau Gatau Vrinanau Khalu Bhaktim Uttamam. Ihanya Bhaktopi Sameshyati Kramathe Bhavantametau Khalu Rudra Sevakau. Muni Prasadat Bhavadangrim Agatau Gatau Vrinanau Khalu Bhaktim Uttamam.
इहान्य भक्तोऽपि समेष्यति क्रमात् भवन्तमेतौ खलु रुद्रसेवकौ मुनिप्रसादात् भवदङ्घ्रिमागतौ गतौ व्रणानौ खलु भक्तिमुत्तमाम् इहान्य भक्तोऽपि समेष्यति क्रमात् भवन्तमेतौ खलु रुद्रसेवकौ मुनिप्रसादात् भवदङ्घ्रिमागतौ गतौ व्रणानौ खलु भक्तिमुत्तमाम्
इहान्य भक्तोऽपि समेष्यति क्रमात् भवन्तमेतौ खलु रुद्रसेवकौ मुनिप्रसादात् भवदङ्घ्रिमागतौ गतौ वृणानौ खलु भक्तिमुत्तमाम् इहान्य भक्तोऽपि समेष्यति क्रमात् भवन्तमेतौ खलु रुद्रसेवकौ मुनिप्रसादात् भवदङ्घ्रिमागतौ गतौ वृणानौ खलु भक्तिमुत्तमाम्.
That's a 9. Tatastarudharana darunarava prakampi sampati nigopamandale vilajjita tvajjanani mukhe kshina vyamokshinandena bhavan vimokshadaha. So when this, of course, when these two really large trees fall down, they create a lot of noise, right? Because the entire trees came crashing down. So when that happened, of course, all the Nandas and the Gopas and the Gopikas, everybody come rushing because they were all somewhere there. They all come rushing, and then they have to now go locate where Krishna is because these huge trees have fallen. So they then get to cut through their way, and then they finally find Krishna there, and they see that he's still tied to that Ulukala. So then these Gopas are discussing is how is it possible that these two trees suddenly fell today? Of course, they were all, withering trees anyways, but then how did these two trees fall? And then they see Krishna tied with a mortar, and he sees that he's still okay. He's not gotten hurt. So they're all like really amazed and surprised. They're saying, you know what, it's really God's blessings that nothing has happened to this boy. And he's somehow, and they're all like very anxious about it. So on the Sametla, the Gopa boys, right, the Krishna's friends who are there, they actually end up seeing all these incidents, right? Whatever is happening, then the Trinavarta comes, and then the previous in the Krishna kicks a cart. They see that now next Agasura is going to come 51st chapters. They see all that. So they actually say, no, we saw it that Krishna was the one who kept dragging this, and he went through those trees and he pulled those trees down, and all this happened, and we saw light coming out of those trees. But these guys are like, what are you guys telling? Like, he's 4 or 5 years old, right? So another, they don't believe. And so they eventually go, they rescue Krishna. And here Bhattadripad then says that, Nandena Mukhe Kshina. So Nanda then, he sees that Krishna was tied to the mortar. Then he then glances towards Yashoda, because Yashoda was the one who tied Krishna, right? So he's like, first of all, you tied small child to the mortar. And so it's just so, just today he ended up getting stuck between these two trees, right? And the entire tree fell. So he just glances towards Yashoda. Bhattadripad is saying, and Tvajjanani, and your mother Yashoda is feeling ashamed. What a mistake I did, right? By tying this poor boy to this. And then, but everybody is very glad that he actually survived all this. So they essentially go rescue him from there. So here they also, so that's what is happening here. So tatas tarudharuna. So that you can say tatas tarudharana darunarava. So first is dharana, next is darunarava. Okay, and then put a plus. Prakampi sampatini gopa mandale. Bilajjita twaj janani Mukhekshina, comma, Vyamokshi Nandena Bhavan Vimokshadaha. Tatastaru Dharana Darunarava Prakampi Sampati Nigopa Mandale Bilajita Twajanani Mukhekshina Vyamokshinandena Bhavan Vimokshadaha.
ततस्तरुद्धारण दारुणारव प्रकम्पि सम्पाति निगोपमण्डले विलज्जितत्वज्जननी मुखेक्षिणा व्यमोक्षिनन्देन भवान् विमोक्षदः ततस्तरुद्धारण दारुणारव प्रकम्पि सम्पाति निगोपमण्डले विलज्जितत्वज्जननी मुखेक्षिणा व्यमोक्षिनन्देन भवान् विमोक्षदः
ततस्तरुद्धारण दारुणारव प्रकम्पि सम्पाति निगोपमण्डले विलज्जितत्वज्जननी मुखेक्षिणा व्यमोक्षिनन्देन भवान् विमोक्षदः ततस्तरुद्धारण दारुणारव प्रकम्पि सम्पाति निगोपमण्डले विलज्जितत्वज्जननी मुखेक्षिणा व्यमोक्षिनन्देन भवान् विमोक्षदः.
Last one. Mahi ruhor madhyagato batarbhako hareh prabhavata parikshato dhuna ite bruvanairgamito griham bhavan marutpuradhishvara pahimam gadhat. So like we said earlier, so all the Gopas, Gopikas are like, it's indeed God's blessings, Hari's blessings, that this small child who ended up getting stuck between these two trees, even though these two trees fell, nothing happened to this child. It's indeed God's blessings. They lift you and then Griham Bhavan, they take you, they free you and then take you inside home. So with that, oh Lord of Guruvayur, please save me from all the ailments. So Mahi Ruhor Madhya Gato Batar Bhako, comma, Harehe is that put a if Hare. So the next word, if you want to, you can break at the da. Prabhavat aparikshato dhuna. If you want to break it, or you can say it together. Prabhavada parikshato dhuna. But the next one, parikshato dhuna, comes together. Iti bruvanair gamito griham bhavan marutpuradhishvara pahimam gadat. Mahi ruhor madhyagato bathar bhako hare prabhavada parikshato dhuna ite bruvanair gamito griham bhavan marutpuradhishvara pahimam gadhat.
मही रुहोर मध्य गतो बतार भको हरे प्रभावाद अपरिक्षतो धुना इति ब्रुवाणैर्गमितो गृहं भवान् मरुत्पुराधीश्वर पाहि मां गतात् मही रुहोर मध्य गतो बतार भको हरे प्रभावाद अपरिक्षतो धुना इति ब्रुवाणैर्गमितो गृहं भवान् Marutpuradhishvara pahi mam gatat.
Rajesh, one question, Rajesh.
Yep.
The second line, Hare Prabhava Daparichado or Vada Parichado.
Yeah, you can either way. So if you want to break it, you can say Hare Prabhavat it, right? Hare Prabhavat aparikshato dhuna. That's one way to say it. Or if you can say it together also, saying Hare Prabhavada parikshato dhuna. That's also fine. As long as you're not pausing, either of that should come fine.
Rajesh, no request. Aparikshato va aparikshato.
Parikshato. Aparikshato dhuna.
Chinnari dane.
Chinnari, yes.
Mahi ruhor madhya gato batar bhako hare prabhavada parikshato dhuna iti bruvanairgamito gruham bhavan maritpuradhishvara pahi mam gadat.
Last line, Marutpuradhishwara.
Mahi ruhor madhya gato batar bhako hare prabhavada parikshato dhuna iti bruvaanairgamito gruham bhavan marutpuradhishvara pahi mam gadat. Sri Krishnaya Parabramani Namaha.
And most of those things like that, prabhavata parikshato, when you're saying it continuously, right? When you're saying it fast, without being slow, it would sound the same. And you can also try it yourself as well. Only if you're saying it slow, hare prabhavat aparikshato, then it sounds like two different words. But when you say it fast, it'll all be the same. It's just easier to learn that way also. So anyway, so we'll stop here. I don't want to jump to the next one when you only have 10 minutes left. So I'll tell you what happens next, right? Before we go to the 51st and 52nd next time. So because of all these things happening, right, all the way from Putana coming, right, and then we saw, of course, this Nalakubara incident happened here. Then I think what else was it's a Sakatasura. I think a couple of those things which we didn't see. It comes in the form of a cart, and Krishna kicks the cart. Then Trinavarta comes in the form of a wind, right, which takes him. So when all these bad omens are happening, so all these Gopas come to Nanda and say, you know what? Although your son is blessed, right, like Gargamuni had come in and said, but something bad keeps happening. So maybe we all should change the place. We all should move away from here. So Gokulam is where they were staying before. And then they end up going from Gokulam to this place called Vrindavanam, which is like further away, right? So on the Gokulam, they end up going to Vrindavanam, which is also along the Yamuna river. So along the coast. Mathura is also along Yamuna river. Vrindavanam is also along Yamuna river. Gokulam is little away inside, right, from the Yamuna. So they end up going to Vrindavanam there, thinking that that's it's a more relaxed, calm place, and hopefully they will not have any such encounters. They pack overnight and they end up leaving. So that's what is happening in 49, where they end up going to Vrindavanam. But even though they go to Vrindavanam there, in the 50th chapter, few other incidents also happens. Again, these Asuras are coming. One of them comes in the form of one of the Gopa boys itself. He comes dressed as a Gopa boy itself, that's the Vatsasura. Then others called Bhakasura, who comes in the form of a crane. So when they are in the Yamuna river one day, he comes in the form of a crane. So all those also happen. And again, the Gopa boys end up seeing all those things and telling as well. So we'll stop there. And next, what we'll do is 51 and 52 are kind of connected. So that's why we will do that. And 52 is, so in this entire journey, Krishna is also giving lessons to all the others. So 52, he's teaching Brahma, right, to kind of teaching Brahma that again Krishna is the supreme lord up in 52. Then in Govardhana incident, he teaches Indra, right, he keeps Indra. Adhe mari the other instance where Agni is also going to come. So for each of these lords, the Panchabhutangal, each of them also, he's teaching them a lesson or trying to show them that who's the supreme lord here. So all that is happening. So 51 and 52 kind of going together, okay, which we'll do next time. So with that, we'll end today's class. Om Sandhanandhavabodhatmakamanupamitam kaladeshavadebhyam nirmuktam nityamuktam nigamashata sahasrena nirbhasyamadham aspashtam drishtamatre punaruru purusharthatmakam brahma tattvam tattavad bhati sakshat guru pavanapure hanta bhagyam jananam काहेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि।